In Swansea, we are particularly interested in austerity, economic development and well-being. And this is why this issue is central to what we are trying to do. We want engagement, and my view is that as academics we have a role in terms of trying to inform local economic development. At the end of the day, they're run by local authorities or governments, but it's important, I think, that there is an academic interest. The SRC funds what we call What Work Centres. In other words, we have extensive knowledge from around the world in terms of what works and what doesn't work in terms of economic development policies. My view is occasionally, and perhaps it's more than occasionally, sometimes economic development policies don't seem to understand what works and what doesn't work elsewhere. Our first conference was made up mainly academics. We had Andy Pike, extensive knowledge of city deals across Britain, which I think gave a very informative talk. We had Andy Carter for the Centre of the Cities, and Tim Williams from Australia, and Professor Mark Berry, who was talking about the importance of transport within city deals. But the feedback we got from the conference last time, limited feedback, I think not many people filled in the questionnaire. The seats were too hard, so we moved. We did too much talking, and there weren't enough time for questions, so we tried to prune the programme. But what we've got this time, we're starting off with academics, and then we're moving on to those practitioners, and hopefully the third conference will again bring together. So what we're trying to do as a university, we're trying to help regeneration in the local area and in Wales and more generally. So I won't talk any longer because I know it's important we have questions, so I'll move back to Alex to introduce the first speaker.
Mae'n brysur mawr dy fi gyflwyno Cadw'r Nesaf gyda ni. Yr athro Kevin Morgan, Dion ymwneud Prifysgol Caerdydd. Mae Kevin wedi bod yn gweithio yn ddybal iawn yn y maes datblygu rhanbarthol dros cyfnod o 20 mlynedd a mwy. Mae hefyd yn arbenigwr sy'n cael ei barchu ar lefel Ewropeaidd ac yn ei gwaith i'r OECD ar ddatblygu rhanbarthol. A un o'r materion dwi'n meddwl mae Kevin wedi ymwneud â fe llawer iawn dros y blynyddoedd yw datblygu rhanbarthol anheg a heb fod yn gyfartal rhwng rhanbarthau a'i gilydd. Dwi'n credu dylen ni gweud hefyd o Kevin yn un o'r academwyr prin sydd wedi gwneud pwynt o ddatblygu I arbenigeddau yng nghyd-destun polisi cyhoeddus, wedi gwneud llawer iawn o waith gyda llywodraethau o liwiau gwahanol yn benodol yn Llywodraeth Cymru yn ogystal â yr Undeb Ewropeaidd. A dwi'n credu hefyd, mae'n un o'r academwyr prin hynny sydd yn ddigon dewr i'w weid o'r Llywodraeth pethau falle dyn nhw ddim eisiau clywed yn aml iawn, a mae hwnna wedi digwydd sawl gwaith yn ystod o'r blynyddoedd diwethaf. Na I ddim mynd I fanylu, ond mae'n brysur mawr I ni gael Kevin yma, a dwi'n croesawu fe'r blaen. Thank you very much, Kevin.
While I'm waiting for the presentation, the technical person to load, can I say first of all thank you to Aled and David for the invitation. Thank you very much for the invitation to be with you today. It's you don't need me to say how momentous a time it is for us all to design policies and governance structures to help us to negotiate what's coming, whatever's coming, and I want to try. That's fine. That's fine. That's good. That's great. Thank you. quite a lot of material in just 20 minutes, so if I've been a bit too cavalier, there's time in the discussion for us to address some of these points. So what I want to try to cover, I want to look at city deals, growth deals, as part of an international trend of decentralisation and devolution, and I'll use those terms interchangeably for the sake of this morning. City regionalism, of course, is just one of the faces of devolution. Then look at some of the narratives that have developed, particularly in the UK, to present city regions, growth deals, city deals, to the general public, and then to look at the Welsh deals, because these are particular deals and they can't be read off from what's going on in England. And then I come to the exam question specifically, to look at some of the challenges facing the governance of our city deals and growth deals here in Wales. And then I end then on some guidelines on making devolution work according to the international evidence base. So that's what I hope to cover in the next 20 minutes. Decentralisation and devolution are part of a trend which the OECD considers to be the most important territorial trend of the last 50 years. In the global north and in the global south, a global trend towards decentralisation. So much so that they could refer to it as the silent revolution. But the evidence suggests that decentralisation in itself is neither good nor bad. Why? Simply because it depends on how it's designed, how well it's designed, and how well it's implemented in practice. A simple point, but a fundamental point. Because these things, to be a devolutionist or not to be a devolutionist, these tend to be entrenched positions in which we think they're either good or bad. But the evidence suggests they're neither good nor bad in themselves. For some reason, the next slide has slipped. My slide deck slips from 3 to 5. I tried to work it out this morning, but it eluded me, and it's eluded me again here. So the slide that you're not seeing, it says that city regionalism is a narrative that's gone viral around the world, and the city regional narrative can be framed in one of two ways. It can be framed broadly, whereby cities are trying to re-engage, reconnect with their regional hinterlands in the name of sustainable development, to try to create more strategic planning spaces, to think about air quality, to think about land management, to think about housing allocation, connectivity in both physical transport and in digital terms, in a broad, capacious sense of the word development. It can be framed like that, or it can be framed narrowly, as we tend to have done in the UK, whereby it's simply another way of creating a vehicle for what the Treasury mandarins call GVA uplift. Economic development in the narrowest sense of the term. And many of our city and growth deals have been heavily informed by that narrow framing. So that's the slide that we can't see, which helps me to explain why I kick off this slide by saying the narrow version of city regionalism has been fueled by what's called new economic geography, which has taken over the world of the academy and taken over the world of policymakers. And the new economic geography, the most famous representative, I guess, is the Nobel Prize winner, Paul Krugman, the American economist. And the new economic geography is enthralled to this notion of agglomeration, of density, of critical mass. And there is a lot of evidence, of course, to suggest that productivity and innovation are indeed strongly correlated with agglomeration. Economic activity under capitalism tends to agglomerate, tends to cluster. And therefore, new economic geographers argue that growth, capitalist growth, is always uneven, but development can be inclusive if you've got connectivity. That would be one of the policy conclusions. Another policy conclusion of the new economic geography is that policymakers really should be fostering agglomeration, not frustrating it. In other words, they should get out of the way. This is one of the policy implications of new economic geography. And that's a very problematical notion in many ways. In economic terms, it's problematical. Why? Because agglomeration can go too far. It can deliver diseconomies of scale. And politically, it's problematical. Because what the rise of city-centric narratives over the last 20, 30 years, in and beyond the UK, has done, is to completely marginalise any rural narrative of development. I'll come back to that in a moment, because we need to redress that balance. Not to create a rural narrative over and above the urban, but to think of new ways of interconnectivity, interdependency between the urban and rural, between city and countryside. So, in terms of city deals themselves, there's two radically different ways of thinking about them, and both of which have their lobbies, have their positions, and their devotees. The positive take, I'm talking about the UK, the positive take on them is that city leaders throughout the UK, the English core cities, plus in Wales and Scotland, see themselves as creating a Magna Carta for the 21st century. They see them, city deals, as being part of a campaign to render the UK less centralised, more polycentric. That's how they see themselves. The critics, on the other hand, the critics see city region, city deals as being the critics of city deals see them as being the signs of a central government, a conservative government, enthralled to a pre-Keynesian creed, using city deals to, in a sense, as a fig leaf to shrink the state and to cut budgets. And then for the city deals, the cities and their municipalities, to take the rap for the cuts in the last 10 years, devolving the axe in that colourful phrase that the critics of city deals have. It has to be said, a judicious take on this evidence would suggest that there's a strong grain of truth in both these positions, actually, because they're not mutually exclusive. So, that brings us on to the Welsh deals. As everybody knows, the Welsh deals can't be read off as part of the English deals. Why? Simply because the English deals tend to be bilateral relationships between the city region and government, maybe the Treasury, whereas in Wales they are trilateral arrangements. The Welsh government is a party to these deals. Why? Simply because economic development, as you know, is a devolved competence, and therefore Welsh government is part of this process. And many people in Welsh government, actually both politicians and office and civil servants, take a view, it seems to me, that the city deal represents an unwarranted intrusion of Whitehall in Wales and poses therefore a threat to the devolution settlement, creating tensions. But beyond the details of those tensions, actually, there are two fundamentally different models of devolution at work in the UK today. There's the traditional national model, if you will, devolution to Wales, and then there's the rise of a more bottom-up form of devolution within Wales. And I'll come back to those two models in a moment, because they help us to explain, I think, some current political positions that are taking place in Wales. So the Welsh deals need to be addressed in and for themselves, rather than thought of as a simple extension of the deals going on in England. And it's important, I think, for us to realise that these new relationships that are emerging, UK, Wales, Brexit, will have a big impact on the future of these deals. Why? Simply because Brexit spells not just a change in our external relationship with Europe, but it also spells a big change in terms of our internal territorial relationships within the United Kingdom. The repatriation of powers, for example, from Brussels to the UK has been widely interpreted by Scotland and Wales as a power grab on the part of Whitehall. Less well known, maybe, is that the entire devolution settlement was made in the context of European law and European regulations. In fact, the European Union was the glue, has been the glue that keeps together the single market in the UK single market, and regulates the relationships between the four nations. So when we take away the European Union, suddenly we are exposed, the territorial settlements, in a sense, are exposed. And if, excuse me, and if Brexit happens, deal or no deal, I think what we'll find is that intergovernmental relations in the UK will take on a completely new significance. And the flashpoints, the potential for internal conflict, territorial conflict within the UK post-Brexit, I think will revolve around three issues above all. The nature of the intergovernmental governance relationship, whereby Whitehall will be forced to take Wales and Scotland more seriously. Currently through the Joint Committee, was UK governance arrangements. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the name for the new regional policy, post-structural funds. This has been promised for a long time coming. It hasn't materialised, and most recently, Boris Johnson, in his campaign for the Tory leadership, made it clear that he wanted to have a strong say in the way that this fund was designed and delivered, even though it's a devolved competence. And then less well known, the flashpoints will come around the common frameworks. The frameworks which keep the glue of the UK single market together post-Brexit, and they will be common frameworks, the agreements that we have in the UK. Yes, we have devolution promoting diversity, but what do we have keeping us together? And those common frameworks around state aid, around procurement, welfare legislation, and employment law will all be big flashpoints and they'll all affect the trajectory of Sydney. So, bringing the story entirely back to within Wales now, I think, we are now 20 years on, aren't we, in terms of our devolution experience. Looking back now, what can we learn? One of the things I think that we can learn is that one of the biggest problems of the first 20 years of devolution has been a highly problematical relationship of central local relationships in Wales. What has that done? It spawned a culture of low trust, and it spawned a tradition of a big disconnect, if you will, between policy aspiration and policy delivery. A point that was picked up, wasn't it? The main theme of one of the most serious inquiries that we've had in Wales in the last 20 years, conducted by Beecham, the Beecham Review of Citizen-Centric Services. So, what this will expose, in my view of thinking, is a chronic capacity comes to the fore that we think of the last 20 years, and particularly more recently. A chronic capacity that afflicts both our national level of government and our local level. And this was even before Brexit. Brexit has exacerbated that capacity problem even more. At the national level, what can we say? Well, we can say two things. Number one, whatever our politics are, whatever view we take of the Assembly, the evidence suggests that the Assembly is simply too small. Period. It is simply too small to do the job it's now being given. That is to say, functions and responsibilities have been devolved to the Assembly, and its capacity hasn't grown And secondly, it's compounded, its capacity constraints by the political culture of the National Assembly for Wales. Why? Because it's practiced a command and control culture, which means it's disinclined to devolve. And I can justify those bold statements in a moment. But two of the big problems, I would say, of Welsh government over the last 20 years. Yeah? Too small and too controlling in terms of its culture. At the local level, we can say these capacity constraints are writ large. They are the biggest single issue, I would say, in our local government system in Wales today. So much so that after a decade of austerity, we have now reached a crisis point in our local government capacity because of Brexit and austerity. But I would also say, and this is more controversial, I've had arguments about this over the last 20 years with my friends in local government. Good practice has been a bad traveller in Wales. Let me put it boldly like that, and I can justify it in discussion. In other words, who should be responsible in Wales for the dissemination of good practice? Well, initially it should be within the unit that we're talking about, within the local authority. Beyond the local authority, it should be incumbent on WLGA to identify good practice and to ensure, to create mechanisms that good practice is disseminated north and south, west and east. I do a lot of work in the Basque country, and the Basques are tenacious about this, about identifying good practice and making sure it travels. Our own work, for example, my own work on public procurement. We worked on public procurement of food, of care, of medical devices, of different sectors. One of the things that comes out of that work is that leaders and laggards live cheek by jowl in Wales. A leading local authority will be living next door to the worst. Why hasn't that good practice spilled over from one to another? And whose responsibility it is? That's just one example of what I mean by the fact that we have failed in Wales to create networks and mechanisms to ensure that good practice travels. I'll come back to that point in a moment, because it's fundamental to whatever structures we design. The key thing is relationships, not structures. So that brings me then to this contentious issue that's emerging in Wales, the regional working agenda. Let me rush through this so that we've got time to discuss it. So regional governance, regional working is today now one of the most contentious issues which is emerging. Hasn't hit the public radar yet, but it's in the pipeline, it's in the discussions between Welsh Government and local authorities. It goes back to some pretty basic stuff. We can't agree in Wales right now how many development regions we should have. We can't agree on the number. Ken Skates' department says 3. When we said, why 3? They said, well, there's 3 in the Economic Action Plan. And by the way, we've got 3 chief regional officers. I said, yes, but why can't we have 4? Well, because we've got 3. Okay. So I'm not being too facetious, but it's a bit circular like that. We've got 3 because we've got 3. The National Assembly inquiry, as you know, WLGA's position is that we have 4. We should have 4. My own view, by the way, I'm a 4 person. Just put that there so we can have a good discussion about this. I think there is no intellectual rationale for bundling mid-Wales into the back end of Swansea. Let me put it technically like that. And we can come back to the discussion. We need to think about the nuanced position of mid-Wales. Some of the older members in the audience will remember the DPRW region, the Development Board for Rural Wales, which was a serious body, in my view, thought about rural narratives, what kept the rural together, and so on and so forth. As I said earlier, the rural has been completely sidelined in Wales, in the UK, within the OECD. Why? Because of the rise and the intellectual ascendancy of the city-centric narrative has displaced all others. And we need to redress that, it seems to me. So that's part of the problem of the regional working agenda. And then there are other problems emerging, you know. I don't want to get too nerdy about this, but those who have been involved in the new regional economic frameworks, by the way, there are 3 of them. Back to that magic number of 3. Yes, I can go on about that. Clearly, I've got a thing about this number. And they've been produced by Welsh Government, and many people, for example, I engage mostly in my own city region, in Cardiff. Many of the stakeholders in Cardiff region wonder why the region needs a new strategy when we've already got one. So that's part of the debate. And they also wonder, more generally, and this is not just Cardiff, but this is all other parts of Wales, why these frameworks are being produced in a unilateral way when Welsh Government talks about co-production. These frameworks, if we need them, they should be produced in an iterative way, in concert with Welsh Government's partners in local government. Otherwise, co-production is meaningless. This gets us back to the theme of this presentation about the quality and caliber of relationships. Whatever structure, you know, we hang up on what is the right structure. There's no right structure. We can make more structures work if we've got the relationship. But you can't make all related structures if you don't have the right relationships. That's what I'll come back to. So, finally, to the exam question about city deal governance. As you all know, when the Assembly looked at this in the city deal inquiry, one of the conclusions was all our city deals are outgrowth themes. They need more accountability and they need more transparency. It also argued, by the way, for a particular deal for Mid Wales and made the case for Mid Wales. In all the deals that I'm aware of, and I know that the Cardiff and most, because that's the one I've been most involved with, but I think all the deals that I've looked at, the business community has been pretty prominent, rightly so, but civil society, much less. And I'm hoping Martin will say something about this in his presentation, so I won't say any more on that one. Collaboration among local authorities, a big challenge. So we've got 2 governance challenges in Wales. We've got the vertical challenge, Welsh Government down to local government, or up to local government, and then the horizontal challenge, collaboration among municipalities in Wales themselves. No matter how many we have in Wales, or we eventually have, we still need better, higher quality collaboration. Just to give a couple of examples. It's well known that Neath Talbot has been uncomfortable with the Swansea Bay. And many of you in the audience will know much more of the nuances of that discomfort than I do. But much of it has gone public. The various projects have got over the line, like Reagan is over the line, marine energy is over the line. I understand that Factory of the Future bit the dust. But when you look at this Swansea projects, you know, as a sympathetic outsider looking in, wanting to see Swansea do well, wanting all the growth teams to do well, for the life of me, I can't understand why Swansea has overlooked the work of Robert Brown. You know, a world-class centre in that advanced batch manufacturing centre doing world-class stuff. And why is it world-class? Not because I say so, but because of the companies that are calling him. The calibre of those companies speak volume for what they think of world-class. A centre with advanced manufacturing, Industry 4.0 as the jargon is, implications for aerospace, automotive, marine, life sciences, all that stuff going on here, and you often pick up on it. And for the life of me, I don't understand that. So if you don't know Robert Brown's work, I urge you to look at what he's done minor miracles working with the world-class veterinary school in Bristol University, designing fine engineering structures, biomimicry structures to help animals have legs again and things like this. Extraordinary work, and now he's applying that to human side. So anyway, it's just a bee in my bonnet I've got. That, for example, if Robert Brown Centre was in the Basque Country, the Basque government would be over it like a rash. And that raises big questions for us post-Brexit. Why can the Basque government be so agile and impactful and well-informed, and why we are not any of those things? And I'm using that simply as an example. And I say that not to criticise what's going on in Swansea, but to say, for goodness sake, why hasn't this guy's work, and if he doesn't get support, all that talent will dissipate, and all the young men and women will take off. And it just makes me bloody mad that we can't get our act together. Sorry to go on about that. Anyway, let's move on to Cardiff. Cardiff's got a lot of problems as well. You'll in Swansea, you'll be glad to know. And the biggest single issue to date in Swansea, in Cardiff, has been the voting system. Local authorities can't agree how to vote. Should it be home off? One member, one vote. Cardiff says, oh no, sit steady on, we don't want home off, otherwise we'll end up like Wyoming, And who wants to end up like Wyoming? The American system, where Wyoming has the same political weight in the American Senate. Wyoming, with less than 1 million population, has the same weight in the American Senate, as California, with 40 million. So there's something going on there. Cardiff is saying, we don't want a Wyoming situation here in Cardiff Capital Region. So they're arguing about, and there's something to be said for both, for one member, one vote on some issues, but for some weighting, population weighting on others. But it has slowed things down in Cardiff, I would say. Anyway, you'll be glad to know this is my last slide now. In terms of future governance questions and how they can impact the deal, going back to my themes. At the UK-Wales level, this issue of intergovernmental relations will be absolutely critical. Basically, looking ahead over the next 10 years, will it be about making up where we completely reimagine our relationships along more federal lines? If we're going to stay together, it's got to be some kind of federal system where we have parity of esteem for the nations, despite the asymmetry in population, or will we be breaking up? It is no longer fanciful to think of us breaking up in the United Kingdom. New groups forming in Welsh Labour in favour of independence would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. Unthinkable. Breaking up, and even if we break up, we'll have to make up after break up, as it were. Seriously, as my Czech friends tell me, when we broke up, we got on better. And whatever happens with Brexit, the big things in our lives, climate change, inequality, dignified elder care, those big things will still be there. We'll still have to address them. So there is life after breakup and life after Brexit, whatever happens. So the UK-Wales level is important. Then we come to this central local issue. And how can Welsh Government shed its aversion to devolution in Wales and overcome the low trust environment? This is a big challenge for Welsh Government. How it doesn't have the capacity to do the things it wants to do on its own. Therefore, it's got to open up, it's got to become more porous, working with its partners in local government, in the universities, in civil society, if it wants to deliver the agenda of the well-being agenda, which is one of the greatest things we've ever done in Wales. We've done the ledge, but we can't deliver it. Why? Because we don't have the capacity to do it. So that's the big challenge. And then on the local level, can the sub-national levels in Wales, the municipality, the local government level, and the new regional level, can they develop an acquired capacity to bridge the delivery gap and to ensure that good practice becomes the norm and not the exception. I believe it can be done, but we really need to step up again. And what does the international evidence say? And I'll end on this. That's what the international evidence says about it. The OECD has brought this together. What makes devolution work around the world? And these are the main OECD guidelines. You'll be glad to know I'm not going to run through all these. They're there on the slide for those of you are interested. But can I say, and this really is my final point, running through all these things is the point I've tried to highlight. What matters above all else is relationships. The quality of relationships is what really matters in development. And at the heart of good, high-performance relationships is trust. And as we say to our master's students, trust is a unique thing in development terms. It's a unique asset. Why? Because it has a value but no price. You can't buy trust. You can only acquire it by discharging your obligations to your partners and working in a mode of co-production where you treat your partners with respect. Yes, you can fail. Failure is allowed. It's not encouraged, but it's allowed. We should raise our threshold to failure, because sometimes failure fails because things are complex, not because your partner has let you down. So in Wales, I would say we need to start thinking about our intergovernmental relationships within Wales and to start building some serious trust. Thank you very much.
And stimulating as usual. We've got about 10 minutes for questions and comments. So if you want to say anything, stick your hand up and say who you are before you ask your question or comment. Before we go. Eleanor Gwyn. We recognise Eleanor Gwyn. Ceredigion.
Kevin, your speech was music to my ears. Because while I'm speaking to you, the point you were making about the lack of recognition by Welsh Government of 4 regions is really been holding us back. And the truth of the matter is, if Philip Hammond had not mentioned Royal Wales in the budget statement back in 2017, we wouldn't be even here now. We would have been forgotten and sidelined. And it's thanks to Edwina Hart that we've got where we've got to, and that statement from London. And hopefully we will be able to move forward. But it's not thanks to the present incumbent as the Minister for the Development in Wales, I'm afraid, because when I've been pushing him to recognise the 4th region, he still says this is a sub-region. Well, sorry, you won't work as a sub-region, it's not really standard. So, get that for
So,
could you expand a bit about what you meant about the separating Swansea Bay from the rural bits of Swansea Bay region?
yeah, well, you've got a fudge. We've got the fudge, you mean? Yeah. We need to as you put it as well, we need to recognise that Wales is apparently the scheme with the other 3 regions. It's got distinctive problems, distinctive agenda, especially culturally, geographically. Those issues need to be addressed, it seems to me. And they can't be addressed while you've been given sub-regional status, if I can put it that way. No, I think the challenge is what we recognise, we work on these 4 development regions. The danger is, that the 4 development regions inadvertently start to balkanise Wales, so that people become self-referential, looking inside those regions, But we need to work both internally and externally, don't we? Because of our interdependencies with Wales, with England. As we doing in Cardiff University, when we signed a deal with GW4, Great Western 4, Bristol, Bath, Exeter, that's what happened. Many people said, oh, you sold Wales down the river. Cardiff University is selling Wales down the river. Now, it's not looking inside Wales. Because our argument was that organisations and places have multiple identities, you know. We're part of our city, part of our city region, we're part of Wales, but we're also part of the UK and a global community of scholars, and therefore we try to address those different identities. But I don't think Mid-Wales will be treated seriously in terms of resources or on the radar screen of politicians until it gets that status. That's my only view. We share that view.
And if you can work with us,
We're very happy to.
I'm Victoria Wick, I'm Director of the Birmingham Foundation. Thank you very much for that incredibly depressing run-through and diagnosis of the problems that have challenged us, I think, for 20 years. This is not just a current, you know, you could change the words, and I think we've been bedeviled by these challenges since the onset of devolution 20 years ago. I want to be devil's advocate and say, well, two questions. The first one is, given all the difficulties that you've outlined and what I would regard as quite major risk factors to the city region project succeeding, do you think it's worth bothering? Do you think the city region approach is the right one for Wales? And if it is, what will it take for the things on your last slide, those that, you know, your prescriptions on the last slide about the things that will make it, what will it take to make those happen, given the bitter experience of the last 20 years?
That's a great question. I don't have a great answer. We've discussed city region for years, Victoria, you and I. I suppose I've been somewhat more in favour of it than you, I think, to be fair to say that. But I've never, you know, as the person who had to sell the city region to the local authority leaders or the heads of the valleys, Edwina dispatched me, partly as the head of the valleys boy. But I'll never forget in full council meetings debating with the head of the Valley Council why they should sign up, this is before they signed up to it, why they should sign up to the city region concept. Because I said, you know, the most difficult thing of all to argue about any city region deal is to deal honestly with the distance, what the geographers call the distance decay effect. That is to say, you know, all authorities will benefit, I argued, but they won't benefit equally. That is the most difficult thing to argue. And there we've got to be honest, you know. For example, all the evidence suggests the more knowledge-intensive a job, the more likely it is to be in a city. This is OECD evidence, you know, and therefore, if you've got graduates in the valleys wanting knowledge economy work, will they get a job in my hometown of Aberdeen? Probably not. I like to think they could at some point. So there's an issue about the pull of the city for certain jobs. Should the city region be a fig leaf for the development just of the city, as some people in Cardiff, we know? Like to think of it is. No. The leaders of the head of the valley said, what's in it for the region? What does the city region have to offer the region? And those are big development issues. And this is why I'm devoted to foundation economy investment as well. Why I'm a fan of the metro to create better, more sustainable transit. But investment in the region, in the valleys, has to take place as part of Cardiff capital region. Or the city region concept has been a failure.
James, you mentioned the lack of capacity in terms of members of the Welsh Assembly. As somebody who worked with them every day, a few months before the Assembly was established, and my understanding was that the Welsh Government at the time did not request additional resources for the civil service where Scotland did. It does appear also that there is a question of capacity and the ability of the civil service in Wales to actually engage across the regions and with key partners. And is that another issue which needs to be tackled?
Yes, the capacity in Welsh Government is twofold. It's a quantitative thing, it's too small to service committees, to mount constructive challenge. But there's a cultural dimension. You know, I'm part of an OECD review team at the moment looking at Wales. And the OECD are very, very exercised about this issue, about capacity, about number of regions, about the capacity of local government, capacity of Welsh government, and particularly the low trust environment in Wales. Where did it come from, they say? You know, who is responsible for it? Well, primarily, you know, Welsh government must be responsible, because that's the most powerful body in Wales. They can dictate the rules of the game with their local government partners. And we've had this command and control culture, a Raj style of governance, left over from the old Welsh office days, that has been reproduced inside our democratic body, which is quite extraordinary. And therefore, we need to address this. And we can only address a problem by first coming out about it and saying, as I've said to Mark, Mark Drakeford recognises this problem. He wants Welsh government to be more agile, more impactful, and to work in co-production. You know, when he feels he's driving an oil tanker, it takes time, especially at middle-ranking civil service level, where they are still locked into, you know, we've got the money, or they used to have the money, if we've got the money, you do as you're told. And we've got to address that culture input if we're going to build joint capacity together, because they don't have the capacity themselves.
This gentleman has been waiting a very long time, but it's just really, on that point, really, really quickly. How much is that cost? Sorry, I'm Jane Williams.
Thank you.
Acting Director of the Market
No,
Strategy. Sorry. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Civil service thing, I've thought about it for years because I used to be a civil servant, as you know. And one of the things that Mike Sullivan and I often talked about, you know, was the fact that it's still the home civil service, right? It's still actually the masters and the senior civil service are still in Whitehall. Right? Do you have a comment on that? Is that part of this issue about the culture, not the quantity bit, but the culture?
Yeah, I think the culture is more important, because if we can get the culture right, I think the other stuff will follow. But I think that if we don't address that cultural problem, where we are Whitehall but small, Today's Park is Whitehall and small in many ways, in terms of its thinking, its mindsets, and its attitude to partners. You know, I've been trying to create, and we've been working with Nesta to try to think about what would more experimental governance look like. You know, how can we be more porous, where government works hand in glove? I've got my own little stories of where it's worked. You know, for those of you involved, where it's worked best, it seems to me, the design of new procurement toolkits. The Can-Do toolkit was designed in a ethos of co-production. I think 21st century schools, I'd be very interested in what you say about that. I think that's been a model for the future, for example, where you genuinely work together, sitting around the table as equals. Not that Welsh government is coming in, sitting in the chair, calling the shots, telling us what to do. We've got to challenge that, because we're finished if we can't do that. Because I think, you see, that culture lies at the heart of my Robert Brown story. Why aren't we over him like a rash? To see a world-class centre here in SA1, which is languishing for lack of support. Because that lack of an impactful culture, you know, where government working at pace and with purpose to recognise something world-class and putting some resource behind it, so to nurture it, to retain the talent that he's recruited. Otherwise that talent is going to dissipate. That's my fear about what's going wrong, what will go wrong with that Centre for Advanced Batch Manufacturing.
Last question before we move on.
Thank you. There's a vast array of issues. Yes, Hugh Lloyd. I've got two hats on. I work part-time at the Active Building Centre across the road. If anybody wants to come at lunchtime, I can take you over there. But I'm a freelance sort of facilitator of governance and other things. So on the 4 regions, been working on the IWA's 100% renewables programme work. It's very clear as an evidenced entity, you might say, that Mid Wales is a different region to the other 3, because it could be the only all-electric region of Britain, the UK, because of the lack of penetration of gas grid. So there's an argument to be made with that work back into the Welsh Government. I think the First Minister starts to get it, because we've spoken to him. But back We can make a four-region argument on the basis of energy and its relationship to the foundation economy. So that's one observation that we could work on. Happy to talk to colleagues about that. You'll tell by my accent that I'm not from this part of the world, but my parents are from Comanche. I spent most of my time working in England on local strategic partnerships, early deals, the nature of those things. What struck me very powerfully from your description is that there's not enough respect in Wales for respective colleagues. If Cardiff is bothered by the relationship with Omar, then either it's got a very poor argument, maybe it has, but also it doesn't trust its other 9 local authority representatives. That's a really big issue. Clearly there are other issues of that ilk. So what can we do to build respect in Wales, between regions, within regions, and perhaps between regions and the Home Civil Service? My one observation would be we need to make more friends in these places so that we realise we're actually on the same game. Because while Wales argues with itself, England is not arguing with itself. Some bits of it are, but lots of bits of it are not, and they will take advantage. So I might be slightly overly expatting this, but there's something about how we build trusting relationships that's really important.
Well, you know, the jury's in on how to build trust. The jury is in, and the evidence suggests you don't build trust by talking about it. You build trust by working together, doing stuff, doing projects together, learning about each other, about each other's strengths and weaknesses, and trying to hang together while you're going through good times and bad times. And the trust becomes the outcome of a process rather than being paralysed by waiting for it to start.
Could we then create more environments in which to do those things?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. We're now putting projects together on building procurement teams around Wales to think about sustainable procurement, to create a community of practice where men and women can share thoughts, about how to do procurement better and address the well-being agenda in Wales. As one example, and doing stuff together helps to build those bonds. Sorry.
Jill, one last short word.
Just this fascinating thing about trust, and if I may, just put in a plug, because we have recently arranged for the next Morgan Academy research seminar to be on this subject and given by one of the Vice President of Cisco, which is of course an organisation that has involvement in this whole sort of agenda at Swansea University. So Guy Diedrich is whose PhD completed with Mike Sullivan, was all about trust in organisations, and it's on Julie the 9th of October at 3:30, and we can let everybody know about that. If that bit of the conversation is, as I think, a very, very interesting one to pursue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And could I thank Kevin very much for his contribution. I hope we can hang around for a bit, Kevin.
Moving on to our second speaker, I'm delighted to introduce Martin Jones, Deputy BC at Staffordshire University. Martin spent a lot of time in Wales and in other institutions and headed up a number of think tanks in the area of economic geography and economic regeneration. He's published 10 books, the latest is here, so just out just recently, on cities and regions in crisis, and over 150 articles. So he really has a knowledge of some of these important issues. So I'm delighted to welcome Martin, who's going to talk about city-region limits. Thank you.
Thank you. I've spent 20 years of my career following Kevin Moore, but Kevin has probably stolen your slides. You'll see some of the same arguments reworked today. I think some of your missing slides are here. So as you can see, I'm not from Wales, which gives me a licence to say horrible things and walk out because you don't know where I live, etc. I worked in Aberystwyth for 13 years. I've also been a practitioner as well as an academic. I worked in local government for Staffordshire County Council. Used to work for Clares when Mike Emmerich wore short trousers before he went on to create Metro Dynamics. I also worked for the Unemployment Unit, now the Centre for Economic Social Inclusion and Work Foundation. So I kind of understand the policy world. I choose to walk away from the policy world, be an academic, But what I want to do is to build on Kevin's presentation, put some flesh on the bones, and hopefully, Victoria, your question, some of this will be depressing, but some green shoots and rays of hope as well. What I want to do is to build on this project that I've been involved in for about 3.5 to 4 years. So I was part of WISERD, I was one of the original co-directors with David Blackerby. I was in charge of the localities programme, which was in the year of the Wales Spatial Plan that Kevin mentioned. But also, I've done probably with researchers about 100 interviews on kind of city, region and local economic development building. Originally we started to look at Manchester and Sheffield, Devo Mac of course, and the Sheffield city region devolution deal was in the wake of that, but also in the context of, as Kevin mentioned, Hayward and the two cutting edge South Wales regions, but also had a watching brief on that Mersey-D interesting border region that then became a project on the North Wales growth deal, which I wrote in the paper as well, and also watching brief because I lived there for a lot while I was Sheffield Towers, in Mid Wales phenomenon. But also I moved from Aber to Sheffield and then down to Stoke-on-Trent. Stoke-on-Trent Brexit capital, 69.4% of people voted Brexit, so I want to connect it in the end, Kevin, to some of the speculations around shared prosperity and how you govern those relationships. So this is based on about 12 to 15 interviews per locality. What I want to do is to focus primarily on the Swansea Bay situation. You might say that's brave or stupid talking about Swansea and Swansea context, but this is based on some of the interviews with folk around some of those tensions around the early Swansea Bay kind of phenomena, etc., which I hope will inform what we're going to talk about later. But I think Kevin put some empirical flesh on the bones of some of the arguments that you've outlined, the majority, Kevin, of which I don't disagree with. And that civil society dynamic is important. So as an economic geographer, what I've been looking at is local and regional economic development, who's involved, why they're involved, who benefits from agglomeration politics, issues of austerity, inclusion, exclusion. This involved interviews with people in boards, in government structures, but people out there in the real world of civil and civic society. So in a sense what we see is a flavour of some of the arguments that Kevin has been put forward. What I'm going to do in the next kind of 17, 15 minutes to follow this, I can skip quickly on some of the stuff at the front because it builds on some of the things that Kevin's been talking about. If you put two economic geographers on the platform, Kevin, we're going to end up talking about the same things. I've been following you for 20 years, so we read the same literatures. But what I'm going to do is to then granulate and go really from global context to local dynamics, to local flavours, to local details and local complexities. I think it creates a nice bridge to what we're going to see through the rest of the day in terms of how you learn from developments in Wales for what comes next, Mid Wales and North Wales, etc. How do you learn from some original complexities? Public policy, as you know, all know in the room, is complicated. When the state intervenes in the economy, it creates contradictions. So there's no such thing as perfect public policy. But as a geographer like Kevin, it's an interesting question about what travels, about the transferability of certain public policies that are geographically embedded, and what you can and can't transfer. So Kevin's last slide is interesting. The interesting thing is what can transfer across different localities and work. So the what works question, I think, is really, really interesting in terms of the fractured nature of the UK that we're going to enter into. So this is what I'm going to do in the next quarter of an hour. So talking about local context, Kevin's covered this. What's important about this, I think, is the logic chain that Kevin talks about. Because there's a logic chain out there from Michael Storper that talks about the keys to the city. So Storper's keys to the city, he's right about California as an economic development model, is the city region is the only game in town. The city region is the only game and that for economic competitiveness and social inclusion. Victoria's question to Kevin is pertinent here. Is it the only game in town? Do you want to make it work or do you want to ditch it? And this links to those new economic geography literatures that Kevin talks about. There's a 25 to 30 year debate that Kevin started with Phil Cook et al. On the new regionalism, arguing what is the appropriate scale for governing economic development. What is the appropriate scale in terms of locality analysis and subnational dynamics and all those politics that you're involved in as policymakers? Because the argument out there is the only way that you can, quote, hold down the global is through a city regional model. Is it the only game or do you want to do something else, etc.? The interesting context here is when you introduce neoliberalism, competitiveness, interplace, competitive regeneration, the beauty game, of course, that leads to city deals, that places competing with each other in terms of those messy dynamics of the money in, the money out, etc. And and what those corrosive elements can do, whereby if you accept the city deal model, you end up signing up to the complexities of a comprehensive standing review. I've written papers